Everybody set? We may even be. Good morning. My name's Brian Jones. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Dutchess County Office for the Aging. And that basically means I'm the eyes, ears, and the mouth of the Office for the Aging. We are located at 114 Delafield Street on the border of the town and city of Poughkeepsie, right across from Marist College. If you know where Cosimo's restaurant is, we share a shopping plaza with them. Well, not a shopping plaza, but a services plaza in our case. And it's a great new facility we've been in since 2019. It includes one of our 8 friendship centers, and it also includes our central kitchen and our administrative offices. And if you ever need anything from us on site, we're open 9 to 5 weekdays. And when you call us, you will get a human. I'm joined today by Sue Serino, who is you may know her from other things, but right now she is the program manager for our Friendly Calls program, which is something that we've started early this year. And pretty simply, what the Friendly Calls program is a way for older adults to stay socially connected, because one of the things that is most dangerous, not just emotionally, but even physically to an older adult, is social isolation, which is different from simply being alone. You can enjoy being alone. If anybody in the room is a golfer, we love being alone sometimes because we don't want anyone to see our mistakes. But isolation and loneliness is something entirely different. And I promise that we will keep the charts to a minimum, but we do want to have a couple here. And I wanted to show you something. This is a chart of what the population of the United States looked like in 1960. And these numbers are way too small. But basically, this is the oldest part of the population. And down here is the youngest part. It's the peak of the baby boom. And you can notice that there are not a whole lot of people in the population who were 65 and up at that point, and a whole bunch who were younger. You know, back when I was a kid in the 60s and 70s, if you met somebody who was 65, that was ancient. Now it's, oh, here's another 100-year-old, which brings us to the chart from 2020. And you can see what happens. A whole lot more people in the oldest age groups and not so much as many in the younger age groups. And that means a lot more older adults total, and thus a lot more older adults at risk of social isolation. One key to what we call successful aging is social engagement, having close friends or people you can just talk to every day. And that's the key of today's presentation. Get out if you can, seek out healthy people wherever you go, religious organizations, social organizations, civic organizations, seniors groups like the ones that will be meeting here from time to time. Even that social engagement is superior to drugs when it comes to preventing dementia. I don't know how many of you have followed Alzheimer's research, but it's frustrating. You see a lot of experimental medications that they get to the mouse testing phase, and it kind of sort of works, but then it doesn't get much more beyond that. They keep trying, they keep plugging away. Maybe eventually they find something, but for now, the social engagement actually works a little bit better, which brings us to the Friendly Calls program. And CBS TV got to come up to Poughkeepsie and check out our operation and how it had been going. And this is from March, but away it goes, and let's see what happens.
CBS's John Diaz shows us how our program in Dutchess County is helping seniors battle loneliness one phone call at a time. For 83-year-old Kathleen Caprese, it's more than a phone call, it's a lifeline.
How are you this morning?
Good. How are you doing? It's human interaction. Miss Poughkeepsie senior Chris says she lives alone.
What did you do this weekend? Keep going on the computer and look at restaurants. Restaurants.
Kathleen has 5 kids who also call regularly. Every additional voice she hears on the phone connects her to the outside world.
When you don't go out and see anybody, you look forward to it. It's someone to talk to. Otherwise it gets very lonely.
This is a serious sentiment often shared by seniors, which is why Dutchess County's Office for the Aging started their Friendly Calls program this January. An initiative that connects volunteers to seniors. The only tools needed: a phone, a friendly personality, and a willingness to have an uplifting conversation.
A lot of seniors, even if they have family, the families are busy and working, and so it's really nice just to have another friend just to talk to.
Todd Tancredi is the office director, who says this is needed now more than ever. Close to 60 seniors have signed up.
The pandemic was almost an incubator for social isolation and loneliness, and the problem was there before the pandemic, was even greater after it.
Each volunteer is trained before they start making the phone calls, calling their selected senior at least once a week for 20 to 30 minutes. The program has now even started to attract college students like this Marist student.
There's just so much to learn about the population, get to know people, get to know like who they are, what we for them.
And a lot of these seniors are homebound. It's not easy for them to come outside, so these simple phone calls are going a long way. As for Kathleen, she says she never wants the calls to end.
It's something to look forward to, otherwise, the day is very long.
But at 83, she is happy to know there's still time to make new friends and new conversations. From Poughkeepsie, John Diaz, CBS 2 News.
It is a great program, isn't it? I think you just get them to answer the phone, have a friendly voice on the other side, and it makes all the difference in the whole.
So that was awfully nice of them. Sue, if you'd like to pick it up from here, some of the other things that would be involved in the Friendly Calls program.
Sure. And I just wanted to tell you, like, you could see Kate talking on a special phone that's a closed caption phones. So those are available to seniors too, because they can't hear so well. They can read, and it helps. They wear that, like she had those the earphones on, which are very helpful. But Rita, who was calling with the dark hair, she's one of our volunteers at the Office for the Aging. She's in her 80s. She just lost her brother. So she's calling somebody that's 93 years old, and they just met for the first time. She went and surprised her at a senior center, which was great. So people are forming these friendships that, they started in January, and the 8 weeks are up, and they're still continuing to call and asking us for another senior that they can call. And like I was telling some of you earlier, I'm turning it into a buddy program. So the seniors that go through the 8 weeks, once they go through the 8 weeks, can then start calling another senior that is homebound. And the CDC just came out with a report about isolation and how detrimental it is to our seniors. So this program is really changing lives. And I just, the videos that you're going to watch, we have the 4 short clips. So this way you'll have the training. I'll have volunteer applications here that I could leave with you as well. And Betsy, I could always leave some more with you too. So thank you for having us today.
Yeah, you didn't have to make up your mind about anything today, but once you sit through the orientation, we think a lot of your questions will be answered at that point, because one of the key forces behind the Friendly Calls program is a New York City-based organization called DeRote, and they've been doing this with tens of thousands of people for over 40 years. So they have seen pretty much any hypothetical that you can think of. One of the great things that's been appealing about the Friendly Calls program, especially for volunteers in rural parts of the county, is it's something they can do from home. The Office for the Aging has a ton of volunteering opportunities, but sometimes it's a lot of time. And maybe you've got other volunteering things going on and you can't get to Poughkeepsie to do something. You can't help out at a picnic that may be somewhere else in Dutchess County. But what you can do is talk to somebody for half an hour. So what we're going to hit right now is the first of 4 videos on the Friendly Calls program. This first one explains what the program is all about and how it works. And there's time for questions in between the videos. But one other thing we recognize is that your best questions will come to you about 4 hours after this presentation is over. You'll be having lunch or a snack or something like that. And then the light bulb will go on. But here's video number 1.
Welcome to the first of 4 short videos that will introduce you to the Friendly Calls program. This initiative connects volunteers like you with older adults, caregivers, and people with disabilities who are interested in making new friends over the phone. Thank you for taking time to watch these videos and learn some new communication techniques. Humans are social beings at our core. Relationships are as essential to our well-being as food and water. Meaningful social connections increase life expectancy. People who can count on others live longer and better. People who are socially isolated lack meaningful relationships and interactions. They don't have people they can count on for support. Often, people who are socially isolated are also lonely. The level of social isolation and loneliness within the US and around the globe is a grave public health matter that affects a significant portion of the population, including older adults, caregivers, and people with disabilities. What happens when people don't have the social connections they need to thrive? It affects our mental and physical health. Social isolation is as serious a health problem as many chronic illnesses. It can be as damaging as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. These are issues that affect people from all walks of life. They touch us individually and as a society. Approximately 25% of Americans 65 and older are considered to be socially isolated. And 1 in 5 say they often or always feel lonely, lack companionship, or feel left out. According to research reported in Scientific American, the number of people with zero confidants has tripled in recent decades. Why is social isolation so prevalent among older adults? It's often triggered by the death of a spouse, other family members, or friends, or having people whom they rely on for social or other support move away. Limited finances also reduce participation in certain activities. When people experience limits to their mobility or become more frail, they may avoid community activities or even stop leaving their home altogether. Many people in these situations are reluctant to ask for help or are unaware of available social services. The pandemic has shed an even brighter spotlight on loneliness. We all know what it means to be socially isolated. We've all experienced it firsthand during the COVID-19 lockdown. Older adults at high risk, and especially those with limited technology skills, have a difficult time staying connected. Building a more connected world is the key to addressing both personal and societal problems. By strengthening relationships, we can protect and fortify each other and our communities. Now that you understand the problem of social isolation, you're probably asking yourself, what can I do to help alleviate it? That's why you're here watching this video. You can check in on a neighbor, talk about your day, or share life stories, or volunteer your time to reach out to someone who feels the need for more interaction. Someone whose circle of family and friends may have grown smaller. Giving and receiving strengthens social bonds and helps to form community. Volunteering your time in service to others is an important form of human connection and reminds us of our value and purpose in life. This is what the Friendly Cause program is all about. It's modeled on a program developed by DeRoad, a nonprofit social services organization in New York City that's been dedicated to alleviating social isolation among older adults for 45 years. DeRoad has paired thousands of volunteers and older adults across the country for friendly phone calls. Surveys show that meaningful friendships are formed from these conversations. Both volunteers and participants benefit and derive a great deal of pleasure sharing interests and experiences and discovering how much they have in common. Thank you for your interest in volunteering with Friendly Calls. The next 3 videos will tell you exactly what you need to do to engage an older adult, caregiver, or person with disabilities in a friendly call. You'll impact their life and yours in a meaningful way.
So that's pretty much the basics of the program. One thing you should know going forward is anybody who's on the receiving end of a call is someone who has agreed to this. They have an existing relationship with the Office for the Aging. In other words, they may be receiving home delivered meals from us. They may be a client of one of our friendship centers. They may have a case manager through the Office for the Aging. The bottom line is you're not cold calling anybody. The following videos, what they will do is explain how the program works in greater detail. And I'm just going to sit down and manually advance this one because this is the slide that's been giving me headaches in the past. So here we go, part 2.
Welcome to video 2 in this series. And thank you for volunteering for the Friendly Calls program. By making a connection with an older adult, individual with disabilities, or caregiver, we hope that the experience will be mutually beneficial and have an enormous impact on both your lives. In this video, you'll be guided through the process of setting up weekly phone calls with your new friend, navigating your first interaction, and developing effective communication skills. You'll be paired with someone who may be independent or home-based, may or may not be active, or could be from a different ethnic group or educational background from yours. One thing you definitely have in common is an interest in making a new friend. On your first call, you'll introduce yourself and schedule weekly calls. Here are some tips for setting them up. Find a quiet place in your home, one without distractions. Disable notifications on your phone. Don't multitask. This is your time to focus on each other, to take a break from the outside world. Make your first call between 10:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. If you want, you can block your number by dialing *67, or you can use a free call masking service. If you're feeling nervous, shy, awkward, or subconscious about calling a stranger, it's normal. Your new friend is likely having similar feelings. Most people feel comfortable after they connect. Don't put it off. Anticipation is the hardest part. It may take your friend a long time to answer the call. They may be screening their calls to avoid scammers, or they may just need a little more time to get to the phone. Allow it to ring 10 times before hanging up. If you can leave a message, identify yourself as a Friendly Calls volunteer. Explain that you'll try again in a few minutes. If they don't pick up the second time you call, they may be unavailable. Let them know that you'll try back at another time. Be specific about when and choose a different day of the week and time. When you do reach your friend, share your name and say that you're a Friendly Calls volunteer right away. Mention the name of the agency that runs the program and remind them that they signed up to be matched with a volunteer. Tell them you're calling to introduce yourself and to schedule weekly calls. Bear in mind that they may be nervous about scammers or unfamiliar phone numbers. Ask how they'd like to be addressed and share the same for yourself. Next, explain that you're looking forward to having weekly conversations for the next 8 weeks. It's important to be clear about this so you both know what to expect. Ask about their availability and decide on a mutually convenient date and time for your calls. Try to schedule your calls for a day when your friend might otherwise have little or no social contact. Take a few minutes to casually get acquainted. This should reduce anxiety and serve as a basis for future discussion topics. Jot down some notes to refresh your memory for future calls. Not sure what to talk about? Perhaps they mention an activity when you discuss scheduling, or simply ask how their week has been and share about yours. What's most important is conveying warmth and interest. Be sure to call your friend on the day and time you agree to. Let the conversation flow naturally, but be prepared with a few topics to bring up just in case. We'll offer a variety of ideas in the Effective Communication and Active Listening video. Remember to slow down and be fully present during your calls, especially if you're not used to long phone conversations. Here are some helpful hints. Your friend won't be able to see your facial expressions or body language, so use phrases like, "How interesting," or "I see," to acknowledge that you're listening and engaged. It's great to ask questions, but don't interrupt them to ask. Wait until they complete their thoughts. Ask open-ended questions like, "What's your favorite way to spend time with your grandchildren?" instead of, "How old are your grandchildren?" This allows your friend to choose the direction of their response. Be guided by your own curiosity without being nosy or pushy. Don't be afraid of periods of silence. They can be helpful to gather and process our thoughts. Make note of topics you may want to revisit in your next conversation. Circling back shows that you are attentive and interested in their life. That's it for now. We've discussed how to set up your environment for undistracted calls. Introduce yourself, agree to a schedule, and have meaningful conversations. In the next video, we'll talk about appropriate topics for discussion, building your friendship, and troubleshooting. See you again soon.
Does anyone have any questions now after watching these two videos? Yes.
Video phone ever come up?
Actually in our questionnaire that we give you at the end, it's part of the survey. They ask that question if you would do a video call with someone. Sometimes the person that you're calling might not be so tech savvy, so it all depends on if they are, but they do ask that question because they're interested to see if people want to do that as well. And somebody else raised their hand too? Yes.
Does this eventually possibly evolve into helping them to go shopping, to doctors and so on?
Well, they kind of, yeah, we have a lot of those services at Office for the Aging because the DeRote organization really weeded out all of those issues. Like when you see how they press star 67, because I've had people ask me about that. And it must have been that maybe one of the seniors or it happened quite often that they would, just call at any time. And people, you have to respect people's privacy. You have your set calls. But we do have a lot of the services at Office for the Aging, even more than I ever knew. And I've been involved in aging for many, many years. And I'm going to actually give you some more information about the different services. And for those that are listening too, there's help with air conditioning if people, it's income based, and heat in the winter time too, but a whole variety of services we have.
Yeah, we're leaving a lot of stuff behind today, some brochures for, as Sue referenced, the Home Energy Assistance Program, HEAP. You may know it most for heating assistance, but it also does cooling assistance. And we are in that season once again pretty soon. I'll tell you after the end of the presentation, all the other things we've got coming up there, because like Sue said, we look up and, even my colleagues and myself, we look around and every once in a while we have a moment where we say, oh, we do that? Oh, we do that. Hey, that's neat. We can help even more than we thought we could.
And one of the neat things that we have too, it's called animatronics. Is that the way you say, Brian?
They're animatronic pets, and this is kind of off to the side a little bit, but it's a companionship thing still. We have had courtesy of the State Office for the Aging, little animatronic dogs. We have little animatronic cats, and they're for all the people who wanted that animal companion. But speaking as the owner of 3 cats, maybe they didn't want a litter box to clean. Just saying, that's kind of that's the kind of downside of owning a cat. And maybe you didn't want one of those things. Well, with the animatronic pets, you get all of the companionship and none of the downsides, none of the cats zooming around the house and waking you up at 2 a.m. or anything like that. There's also for bird lovers, there's even something called a walker squawker, which for an older adult who's got a walker, the little parakeet looking thing. I never got a really good look at what breed of bird it is, but we can take care of those specifics during conversations later. But it perches on the arm of the walker and it does its thing and hopefully doesn't interrupt too many conversations.
Yeah, and the dogs and cats move and make noises, so they feel like they actually have a companion, which is really nice.
So they get an animatronic pet.
Yeah.
If someone asks for it, and we had the was it the iPads too that
we have some tablets that older adults can use. We have other devices. There was one that's kind of it's a little bit, if you're familiar with an Alexa device, we have been distributing one called LEQ. We are temporarily out of them because they've been so popular, but it's kind of a companion / reminder device that can even tell you bad jokes.
And it does do it like throughout the day. It might say, if it gets to know your routine, say, oh, have a nice walk and don't forget this or don't forget that. And it's pretty interesting for people that, are looking for a little bit of
it's good for medication reminders and things like that. There's a whole we've called the representative from LEQ up here to talk about it in greater detail. But let's get to part 3 of this presentation and see where we go from here, because this gets into what might happen in real life calls. Are we moving forward or what here? All right, let me see here. We'll move ahead to number 3. Here comes number 3.
Welcome to video 3 in this training series for the Friendly Calls program. Thank you for volunteering to connect with a new friend. In our last video, we learned how to set up weekly phone calls with your friend, navigate your first interaction, and enhance your communication skills. We learned how important it is for your calls to be on time. This shows that you respect and value their time. Enjoy this opportunity to focus on one another and take a break from the outside world. Always call from a quiet, distraction-free place with consistent Wi-Fi or data. And disable notifications on your phone. Avoid calling while in transit or multitasking while you're on the call. And we learn to keep calls at 20 to 30 minutes. Be consistent with this so you don't unintentionally create expectations that are not sustainable. In this segment, we'll talk about appropriate topics for your weekly calls, nurturing your new friendship, and troubleshooting. What should you talk about? What should you avoid? Here are some helpful guidelines. Never give advice or involve yourself in legal, financial, or medical matters. If your friend asks for help, suggest that they find an experienced professional for guidance, or discuss the matter with a family member or other close confidant. Be cautious when discussing politics, religion, health, and family dynamics, especially when you're just beginning to get acquainted. These subjects may come up, but it's best to keep the conversation light and turn to a more comfortable topic as soon as possible. We'll talk about how to navigate these kinds of conversations in video 4, establishing and maintaining boundaries. Not sure where to start your conversations? Lead with curiosity. Ask what they're interested in or even passionate about. Here are some suggestions. Most New Yorkers love to talk about their community. Do they have a New York story they love to tell? Ask them about a favorite recipe. If they could have a personal chef for the night, what would they request? Food memories can inspire conversations about their personal history and traditions. What's their favorite book, movie, or TV show? If they could produce a movie or write a book, what would it be about? If they were a talk show host, who would they invite as a guest? What topic do they know a lot of random trivia about? What really makes them laugh? If they were a college professor, what would they teach? Do they have any pets? Did they have pets in the past? Did they have a career? Are they currently working? What's their favorite vacation spot? If they could travel anywhere in the world, where would it be? A key to building your friendship is using active listening skills. Ask open-ended questions and circle back to prior conversations. Draw your friend out by referencing people, places, and things they've mentioned before. It helps to build a library of common references. This shows that you're attentive and interested in them and invested in your friendship. Relationships develop at different paces. You may hit it off immediately, have a lot in common, and find that the time flies by. It might take more time to connect and find areas of mutual interest. Be patient. Keep an open mind. Relationships that are slow to develop can still become deep, strong, and mutually beneficial. Don't be shy about telling your new friend that you've enjoyed talking. New relationships can be vulnerable, so affirming the connection really helps. Remember, the goal is for this to be a mutually rewarding, enjoyable experience. It's okay to tell other people about the program and your new friend, but be respectful of their privacy. Don't share anything specific. Avoid opening up conversations about new topics or weighty subjects in the last 5 minutes of your call, especially if your friend is talkative or has been reluctant to end your calls on time. How do I wrap up a call after 20 to 30 minutes? First, preparation is key. Let your friend know about 5 minutes before the end time that you'll soon need to end the call. That can preempt a potential challenge. It can be easy to lose track of time when you're engaged in an interesting conversation. When it's time to go, say something like, "It's been so nice chatting. I look forward to talking again next week. Maybe we can pick up where we left off. I'd love to hear more next time." Restate when you'll be calling next. It's a reminder that there's a structure and boundaries to the program. It's also possible for friendly call pairs to hit a roadblock now and then. Here are some common challenges and solutions. What if your friend doesn't want to talk when you call? Try not to take it personally. It doesn't mean they're not interested in building a relationship with you. We have all had days when we're not feeling well or just not in the mood to talk. Simply reschedule your call. A shorter call can be meaningful as well. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. However, if your friend repeatedly misses or declines your scheduled calls, please inform your program manager and talk about the best next steps. What if the Friendly Calls program isn't what you were expecting? Maybe your new friend seems to have a more active or full life than you expected and doesn't come across to you as lonely. Perhaps they keep talking about spending time with various family members, and it makes you wonder if this friendly call pairing is serving an important purpose. Remember, the Friendly Calls program is about enrichment and connection, not necessarily need. It's about forming a meaningful social connection, not being the only connection. People experience social connectedness differently. What might feel like enough for one person might not be enough for another. Know that your weekly phone calls were requested by your friend and they've chosen to continue. When should you contact your program manager? It's important to alert them to serious concerns about your friend's well-being. For example, if you haven't been able to reach them after multiple attempts over the course of a week, or if you or your friend have a desire to stop your weekly calls, which could be due to unexpected circumstances like a major life change, or because the conversations aren't feeling comfortable after a few calls. If you feel there's an urgent issue, for example, you think based upon what your friend has chosen to share, that they don't have enough food, or can't meet other basic needs, or you suspect elder abuse, contact your program manager immediately. For medical emergencies that may be expressed during your call, like trouble breathing or chest pain, call 911 immediately, and then alert the program manager soon after. That's all for now. We've talked about appropriate topics of conversation and those to avoid. We've learned how active listening skills can help build your relationship. And we've discussed how to deal with challenges. You're ready for the final video. Establishing and maintaining boundaries. See you then.
Now, in anticipation of one of the questions you may have when you see the word program manager and something like that, that's referring to Sue in this case. The second thing you may have noticed is, well, yeah, what happens if you're on a call and the person on the other end has a medical emergency and you're calling 911, but you're here in Unionvale, and let's say the person you're talking to is in Red Hook, and you don't know Red Hook very well. And what first responders do get is the contact information for the person you're talking to, and they should be able to reverse look up the address from there and take it from there. So they between this program and other sources, we're able to anticipate a lot of the bigger problems. Any questions before we move ahead to video number 4? Again, no pressure now. You can come up with a question later. Sue will get you her direct line at the end of all this today. And again, we left behind information about a whole bunch of other programs too. And one of the things you would learn if you choose to take part as a volunteer in the Friendly Calls program is when you hear things like this, you can say, oh, wait, Office for the Aging has a service for this very thing that you mentioned, sir. For example, let's say they mentioned to you, I got to get my power of attorney done, or I got to get my will updated, this, that, and the other thing. Now, that's chances are you're out of your depth on that because it's a legal issue, but the Office for the Aging happens to have an attorney that we contract with who works on a suggested donation basis. He takes care of the simpler things, simple power of attorney, simple will, things like that, housing issues as well. He won't go to court with you. So if you get a speeding ticket on your way home today, you are on your own. But let's move ahead to video number 4.
Thank you for volunteering for the Friendly Calls program and making weekly calls to an older adult, someone with disabilities, or a caregiver. We hope you'll make a meaningful new social connection. You've gotten past initial introductions and your conversations are starting to get deeper. Next, it's important to give some thought to setting expectations and boundaries. Boundaries are the expectations, limits, and rules we set for ourselves within relationships that guide how close we let people get. Establishing and maintaining clear expectations helps make relationships more comfortable and fulfilling. It's critical to set limits that are consistent with the goals of the program and are practical for you and your new friend. The goal of the program is to connect you and your friend for a series of mutually enjoyable weekly social calls. The boundaries we're asking you to set will help you achieve that. Limit your calls to once per week and about 20 to 30 minutes long. Use your time together to share stories, talk about common interests, and connect. Never ask for or share legal, financial, medical, or personal information, or make any promises beyond your phone calls. These are considered red light topics. They should be avoided. There are also some topics of conversation that are delicate and should be navigated with care. Here are some examples: politics, religion, health conditions, and family dynamics. Setting and honoring boundaries can be especially tricky with these topics, so we suggest that you avoid introducing them. If your friend initiates conversation about a yellow light subject, do your best to keep the conversation light and pivot to a more comfortable topic of conversation when possible. For example, let's say they tell you they're coping with debilitating pain from arthritis and start to list activities they can no longer enjoy. They mention that swimming is the only exercise they can still do comfortably. Avoid discussing their medical condition. Something like, "I'd love to hear more about your swimming. I also swim. I like freestyle. How about you?" It's important to be especially attuned to the expectations and boundaries you're establishing in the first few weeks of your relationship. These early conversations form the foundation of your friendship and establish a pattern for your interactions. For example, you get caught up in your first conversation and talk for an hour. The next week, you keep it to 25 minutes, and your friend is surprised when you end the call. Why is this a problem? You inadvertently set an unsustainable expectation. Instead of thinking about the great 25 minutes you just shared, your friend might be focused on the big discrepancy between your first and second calls. They might be confused, disappointed, or even feel rejected. Friendly calls are most successful when you and your friend are consistent and stick with the agreements you've made. Boundaries may change over time, but it's important to be clear and intentional about it. For example, it's okay for you and your friend to decide that your calls will be 40 minutes long instead of 20 to 30. What's essential is that you have a conversation to make sure you're on the same page and haven't just slipped into a pattern that may not be desired or sustainable for both of you. If your friend asks you for something that does not feel right or isn't aligned with the program goals, it's critical to say no. Be respectful, clear, and kind when you need to say no, and when your friend sets a boundary with you. For example, your friend says they're confused about whether or not to withdraw money they've invested and wonder what you'd suggest. You should say something like, "That is definitely outside my expertise. It might be worth reaching out to whoever manages the funds to talk it through." Then change the subject. There may also be topics you'd prefer not to talk about. That would be green light subjects for someone else. That's absolutely fine. We all have our own areas of sensitivity. For example, your friend asks if you have any pets. Your dog died 2 weeks ago, and it's just too hard for you to talk about her right now. You might say something like, "Unfortunately, my dog died 2 weeks ago. I'm not ready to talk about it yet. I would love to hear more about your cat, though. We definitely share love for animals." Or if you prefer, say, "No, I don't, but I'd love to hear more about your cat." If you're avoiding a red or yellow light topic to follow program guidelines, don't hesitate to say that. Feel free to blame the program. It can give you an easy out from a potentially uncomfortable conversation, and your friend is less likely to take it personally. Be clear and listen to any reaction your friend has, and then move on by introducing a new subject proactively. When your friend shares something they care about, engage enthusiastically. This will help reinforce your connection and diffuse any discomfort from when you said no. If your friend draws a boundary with you, acknowledge it. Restate your understanding of it to make sure you're on the same page. Thank them for being honest and clear, and ask any clarifying questions you have. For example, you ask what your friend was like as a teenager. They tell you they don't like talking about it, that it was very traumatic. You might say something like, I understand that talking about your adolescence is really hard for you and you'd rather not. Thank you for being honest and clear. I won't bring it up again. Just so I understand, would you prefer not to talk about your past in general, or is it just your adolescent years? Listen carefully and take a few notes to refresh your memory before future conversation. Honor their request immediately and without exception. Missteps can happen, even when everyone has the best of intentions. The best way to handle it is to assume goodwill. Don't expect your new friend to read your mind. You'll need to let them know if they bring up a sensitive subject. And you can't read their mind either. So if you're not sure about whether it's okay to talk about something, it's best to ask your friend. What if you share something you wish you hadn't, or ask a question you realize was too personal? For example, while telling your friend about your day, you inadvertently mentioned an appointment with your oncologist. You intended to omit that, but it just slipped out. You might say something like, I'm very sorry for bringing up the medical appointment I had this afternoon. It was a mistake, and I'd rather not talk about it. I hope you understand. Then shift the topic to something more pleasant. I would love to tell you about something that happened today. I bumped into my favorite professor from college. Seeing her brought up so many wonderful memories. Did you ever have a teacher who really inspired you? This gives you the chance to acknowledge the misstep, apologize, and move on. What if there's a serious boundary violation? For example, your friend is rude, becomes verbally abusive, or uses hateful language. Misunderstandings can happen, but you do not need to tolerate this type of behavior. If you feel comfortable addressing it directly and talking it through, that's okay. But you don't have to. It's okay to give yourself some space. Don't feel obligated to make a decision at the moment about whether or not you want to continue your weekly calls. You might say something like, I'm feeling uncomfortable with what you just said. I need to gather my thoughts. I'm going to hang up right now. Contact your program manager about the interaction. What if you're unsure about continuing your friendly calls beyond the initial 8-week commitment? That's a choice both you and your friend have, and doesn't need to be discussed until the end of this commitment. Whether or not you choose to continue, it's a good idea to mention where you are in the 8-week cycle every couple of calls. For example, during call number 4, you might say something like, it's hard to believe this is only our 4th call. I feel like we really connected. I look forward to continuing for the next 4 weeks. This reduces the likelihood that they will be caught off guard when it's time to end your calls, if that's what you wind up deciding. It gives you both an opportunity to prepare for that well in advance. In this video, we've learned to set and maintain clear boundaries and the importance of being direct and specific. If you're vague, your new friend might overstep those boundaries. And if you're not clear about something your friend said, ask for clarification. Remember, relationships are unique and dynamic. They will continue to evolve. That's part of what makes them interesting. Thank you, and enjoy your new friendship.
So any questions after all 4? Yes. That's something that the state, this is their program that they gave to us. So I don't know if DeRote did the same thing. the
Not
organization.
sure, but 8
Yeah.
seems to be what works best. And after the 8, if it worked out really well, what happens after that is up to you and the person you're talking to.
Yeah, out of the probably 40 volunteers that I've had since January, maybe 5 are not continuing to call because they're traveling or what have you, but the rest have remained buddies, which is pretty neat.
And again, this is something you can do not only from home, but if you have, let's say you commit to the 8 weeks, but you realize, okay, 5 weeks in, I'm going to be on vacation. You can call from wherever you're on vacation. You know, that can still happen. So you can still do that. We've had a few people, because we started it in the late winter. You know, a guy called us up and said, listen, I can start this. It was February at the time, but I'm going to be at spring training down in Florida. Can I call from down there? I'm like, yeah, the other guy on the other line's a huge Yankee fan. He would love to hear from you down there. And speaking of interests, like being a sports fan or whatever the interest may be, painting, gardening, as the case may be, the application that we have here today, part of it involves you checking off a few things that you're interested in, and there's a lot of blank space next to it for you to fill in the blank for things that aren't on that list. The participant in the program is filling in a form very similar to that, and they agree to play by the rules, same as you would. But what Sue will do is she'll take your applications on one end and the prospective participants on the other end, and it's kind of like playing matchmaker. You know, somebody, if you garden, we'll try to find you another gardener. You know, if you're into baseball, we'll try to find you another baseball fan so that there's at least one jumping off point. But it is a little bit like being a talk show host, as you kind of saw them allude to during the videos. I don't know if you've, like, whether you watched Jimmy Fallon or Johnny Carson, there were guests on their shows that were okay. And then there were the days where they had Robin Williams or Jonathan Winters on it, and all you had to do was say hi, and then you were done because the next 10 minutes were going to be absolutely fantastic. That's the kind of person you may talk to, get on the other end. You may have trouble getting the conversation started, and like they said in the videos, that's okay. You may get somebody like how my mom used to be, where you could say, hi, Pat, and you were good for 25 minutes. But again, your follow-up questions, you're welcome to ask them now or later on. Things that's the reason why they set up a specific day and time for it, so that you and the participant on the other end will know that on Tuesday at 10:15, a call is coming in. So once you've got the date and time narrowed down to something that specific, chances are it's the person who's really calling to talk to you and not a spammer. Second thing is, for any of the seniors groups here, caregivers groups that you may have in town, I do scam prevention presentations. And I'm constantly updating them because scams are always updating. Scammers are, they are, you know, I wish I didn't have to say it, but they're remarkably good at what they do. So that's why they keep on coming and changing their tactics. But, you know, talk to me and I'll book a presentation. I'll come back here. We are very difficult to get rid of now that you've invited us in.
And I also set up the call, you know, the initial call, not that I set up the day and time, but I talk to the volunteer and to the participant so they know who's going to call them and approximately when, and then they do it and then they schedule themselves. And we also give you a call log too that I could email to everybody, whoever wants to volunteer. And it has the 8 weeks listed, because sometimes you want to jot down notes like they say, but then you can put the day and the time. And it's just something that we take at the end of the 8 weeks.
So we do have some people that could be here today. that
Yep.
want to volunteer in calls.
Great.
Do we just give them an application and send it to you? or-
Yeah, and I don't have the signature page for some reason, Betsy. So maybe I can just email these to you if that's okay.
We'll get you caught up. Good. Anything else? Again, no pressure. Doesn't feel like it's a last chance, because we're both going back to the office after this, and you can catch us then.
Well, on the initial forms, it has all of that. So then we condensed it so that they don't have personal information. So you'll get like for the person who will call, you'll get their first name and their age, not their birthday. That's information that, you know, we just don't put out there, so. Yeah, so we're very protective of your, you know, your information and their information. What I do, I do in my car, put myself on the run, you know, she was only there a couple days a week. And, but right now I have people that are messaging me that they can't get a hold of somebody, so. But it's good, because then I go to check, and somebody just in the hospital, and, you know, it's been,
And to follow up on that, and what if there's an emergency? Well, you know that the person you're talking to on the other end is, for example, Brian, and he lives in Tivoli, and this is his phone number. And from that, they would be able to, if I had the situation and I was on the receiving end, they would able to figure out where I live, and from just the name and the number. But that would be something that only the first responders would have access to.
People that are really, we have people that come in to visit us all the time. Every now and then somebody will want to talk because they're very, very depressed and they're in their 80s or 90s and they don't have any.
Send them our way. Yeah, well, you know, there may be other things that they need, and that's what a lot of the calls to the Office for the Aging are in the first place. It's either a senior themselves or a child, a caregiver or something like that who's seen them maybe for the first time in quite some time, and they have that uh-oh moment. What we're trying to do with the Office for the Aging is get people to get to know us before they need us, to kind of plan for, I don't want to say it's inevitable, but it's at some point probable that something's going to happen that they can anticipate and be ready for. I mean, nobody has discovered the secret of immortality yet. When they do, our office wants a much larger budget.
And I think we have, what is it, almost 70,000 people that are over 60 years old.
Yeah, it's something like that,
in Dutchess County.
70,000.
It's a huge number.
We get something like 37,000 calls to our front desk a year. And one thing to know, if somebody wants to just talk to us, if they call us during business hours, they will get a human. It's none of this voicemail labyrinth to go through. One of our receptionists is bilingual Spanish, so she can walk you through a few things as well for the people who, and we're getting an increasing number of population from outside the country. Maybe their kids emigrated to Dutchess County decades ago, but mom or dad was back in the old country. And now it's gotten to the point where mom is 90 and the kid who came over from Pakistan is now 60. And he's got mom coming over here, but all she does is speak Punjabi. We have a way to connect them with services in the language in which they feel most comfortable. We work with a service called Language Line that can provide that services in at least 90 languages.
And we have
110? Yeah, and you can look, if you poke around the Office for the Aging and the general Dutchess County website, at the top is there's an accessibility link that you can click on, and it will open up things for people who have trouble seeing the screens and the colors we use. They want the text a little bigger. We can do that. It can change into other languages. I can't vouch for the accuracy of the translation, but it will be in the ballpark. And again, there's tons and tons and tons of those languages available.
And Betsy, what you were talking about is the seniors with depression. One of the most shocking things, and maybe I shouldn't have been shocked, talking to the seniors, they have a lot of them have therapists, which is good because they're getting help, even though we really don't have a lot of geriatric therapists in Dutchess County. They have to go out of the county for that, but they're doing it, a lot of them, I think, online. Which is really good. But we have caseworkers, we have nurses. So one of the girls, I asked her for the information because they do the Medicare stuff. And then there's a whole host of other things that any kind of caregiver support, like the legal assistance that Brian said, it's all in here. But it's amazing all of the services that Office for the Aging has. And so that's why we've been going out a lot to tell people. So like he said, it's better to know us before you need us. And especially like a lot of us, I'm in my early 60s. So my mom and mother-in-law are 83 and 93. So it's nice to know that we have these resources here.
Yeah, and don't get the idea that you have to be an expert to call us in the first place. And we'll field calls about pretty much anything. And if we're not the exact right people to talk to, don't worry about it. We can get you pointed in the right direction. A lot of people call us about scams. Besides the scam prevention resources sheet that we have available on the Office for the Aging website, we wind up directing a lot of people to the State Attorney General's office. There is a branch in the city of Poughkeepsie for that, and there's a local contact number for that. And again, you may come to the Office for the Aging with one question, but nobody said you had to be the expert. That's what we do at the front desk. If we hear a specific kind of question, referring back to, let's say, the one person who thought that they maybe didn't have enough to eat. Well, we have a home delivered meals program. For which it's a mixture of paid and volunteer drivers. So if anybody would like to drive for us, we can have them operate out of our Friendship Center in either Hopewell Junction or Pauling. We have 8 of them around the county, and they deliver food either daily, once a weekday, or for people in outlying areas. And I know Unionville may be one of those. We sometimes deliver frozen meals, a package of 5 for once a week. For some people, we also deliver what's called night trays, but lunch is our main focus. We have this massive central kitchen now, and at any given day, on the average, we serve about 500 people, a combination of homebound county residents and people who are clients of our Friendship Centers. And we send hot meals out to the Friendship Centers, and they stay hot. And our health department checks up on us. We deliver out to Millerton, up to Red Hook, out to Pauling, all the other centers as well. And sometimes there's going to be somebody from our health department there with a food thermometer, and they want to check out and see how we did. Is it still 140 degrees? And so far, we have passed with flying colors, knock on wood. But you could see how, where you ask one question simply just here by talking to us, we could go off to who knows where. So just don't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, Betsy, when you see everything that Office for the Aging does. They even have New York Connects, where you don't have to be over 60 years old. Anybody could call and they'll connect you. And Brian, you probably know more about that.
Yeah, NY Connects is a state operation that works within the Office for the Aging. So we have a good idea of what exists, the agencies and so forth that are licensed to provide services here in Dutchess County or in the state of New York. But if someone calls and the service doesn't happen to be available in Dutchess County, if somebody has to go down to Westchester or up to Albany or something for that like that, that's where NY Connect steps in and can say, yeah, we can take care of that. And here are the services that are available in White Plains, Kingston, and Troy, let's say.
Well, thank you for having us here today. This was great. So.
We are leaving everything behind.
Yeah.
And we can bring even more. And there's a lot more you can look up on our website too.
Get more involved too with helping organize things for our seniors, and there's going to be more readings.
Yeah, I do a variety of presentations, not just scam prevention, but also we have another one called Aging in the Home, because a lot of people who, let's say they built their first home here, but that was in 1963. And now the home is showing its age, but they really like it. And what can they do to continue living there independently for as long as possible? My presentation on aging in the home covers mainly the things that people can do for free, that they can do with a small amount of DIY skills. And I do touch on the issues where, yeah, if they do want to hire the professional, if they're thinking, okay, I got the budget for that, I got to spend the money to, if I'm 65 and I want to live here till I'm 95, what am I going to do to make that happen? And we can talk about that. And our nutrition coordinator, I don't know if some of you may have met Nimesh from time to time. He has a new nutrition presentation every year, because nutrition and exercise are part of the package that's key to successful aging. And it's, and the nutrition thing, people hear nutrition, they go, uh-oh, kale. I'm going to have nothing but kale for the rest of my life. It's not like that.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is Rebuilding Together. They'll be out at our senior picnics. But if there are people that are listening that actually need help with, whatever it is, a ramp or repairs to their home, they can fill out an application. And also Maureen Lashley from Habitat for Humanity is doing some senior projects now too, for anybody that needs that information.
Yeah, there's simple thing. It can be something as simple as a ramp, but projects get to the point where, I don't know how to do this. And we encourage people to form and get involved with their own local seniors groups, because some of the best ways to pass along information about people, handyman, who's good, who's your reliable plumber, who's your guy. You can share that information among yourselves without having to try to go online and see what's a real review and what's fake. Word of mouth locally sometimes works the absolute best with things like that. Yeah, rebuilding, there's some income qualifications involved. Same for Habitat for Humanity. They work on some things based on how many workers they have. You may know Rebuilding Together used to be the group known as Christmas in April. And they've just finished their latest rebuilding day, where they just swarm a house and they do a whole mess of work. And now the person who is 85, 90 years old or whatever, who was not able to fix all that kind of thing, can now live there for as long as they practically can.
We had somebody who needed that program. I think our problem in Unionville, if we even have a problem, is people are very independent. They've lived here their whole lives. They work really hard. They continue to work really hard, and it is difficult for some people to ask for help.
Seniors grew up in a time when they never asked for help.
They never ask for help.
So that's why we make it a point to talk about those services, and especially at our picnics, which are coming up. Rebuilding Together is there, so they'll be able to have their information.
Yeah, one of the things that we also mention, along with getting to know us before you need us, is part of aging gracefully is accepting help gracefully. It can be something as simple as a smoke detector. I can't speak for every volunteer fire department in the county, but many departments will. If you ask them, hey, can you check out my smoke detector? They may have a replacement program. Again, I don't know. There's so many little departments and I don't know how each little one works, but they may be willing to, yeah, I'll get up on the step stool and do it so you don't have to. Yeah, Red Cross does that kind of thing. But again, it's tough to get out in rural parts of Dutchess County. You don't need me here to tell you that.
You're thinking we're going to want to have a senior fair where all of these things might be represented at a table, at various tables in the room, so they can move from place to place and they get what they wanted. Maybe, it's going to be months and planning, but they don't want to try to get it. But maybe some of these services we could ask you guys and you can help us provide.
Yeah. When you've got the date in mind, let us know.
And the other thing, years ago when I was on the town board, I brought all of the county services, Rich Perkins and I, to the town hall building, because people don't even know the services that you even have in the county. And they did that, that was back with Marcus, but he let them come and set up tables, and it was really great.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
We'll take over the whole building.
Just not on a Wednesday for senior.
Yeah, Wednesday is picnic season. We're doing that pretty much starting with the 31st with the picnic out at Boyce Park in Wingdale. And then we've got 11 more after that. But after Labor Day, the schedule gets slightly less crowded.
Hey, thank you.